You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk here live on Northeast Streaming Sports. We're live on Zodiac TV today. I want to welcome the Zodiac TV viewers. Going live tonight, they are on their Apple TV app. So good, congratulations to them. I may be on that show, interviewed for a few minutes tonight. I'll probably stand out. Listen, I want to thank all the groups again that share this. Guys, if you get a chance, go to Facebook, send them a message. They've taken down the TGI Sports Talk page. I'm broadcasting now through my personal page, Northeast Streaming Sports page, and all our other outlets except TGI Sports Talk. We're on YouTube. We're on all the podcast sites, iHeartRadio, etc. But send them a note. Tell them to put the site back up. We didn't break any rules or regulations. Get caught up in some silly algorithm. Send them a note. Tell them to put it back up. Right? All the drivel and nonsense we got to see all day long. There's no reason for our show to be taken down. Not our show. The show's going on, but the page. So anyway, it will limit the people that can see it. So once I'm back up, they'll all get this interview and, we'll double our views. So let's do that, please. And listen, on a better note, I want to thank my guest from last week, Daryl Knowles. Wonderful interview with Daryl last week. He's such a good guy. And I continue to love chatting with the baseball players of yesterday in my era. And it's a great time. And in that vein, my guest today is going to be Mike Heath, former Major League Baseball player, really good catcher. Started out with the Yankees, moved to he got traded to the Rangers, but I don't believe he ever played with the Rangers. Went to the A's, the Tigers, the Cardinals. Finished up with the Braves. I'm not sure I missed anybody there, but we'll chat more about that with Mike Heath, my guest today. Let's get started with that. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. It's here finally, Friday the 30th. Here we go, April.
I tell you, there's been a lot of anticipation for this interview today, and I don't want you to let me down.
I don't think I will. Just ask the right questions, and you'll be surprised, man.
That's awesome. You know what? I just like to have a conversation. It's funny. I get started. We have a conversation, and by the time an hour's up, or 50 minutes or whatever we go, I haven't even gotten half of what I wanted to talk about. So, but that's good. Tell us a little bit about. I see you got your red shirt on today and your bracelet. Give us a little idea what what's up there.
Yeah, well, I have to give the advertisement for Harley-Davidson, which is one of the motorcycles. And then I wear red on Fridays to support all the deployed troops in our nation. I support them. And then on my bracelet, I have the thin blue line, which I also support the police department. So what the good thing of it is that we have this planet with this little bit of earth, the green earth. And it's part of what we call the United States of America. And God bless the United States. And this is a great country to live in.
It is great stuff. I mean, we got to support our military, got to support our police. I mean, it's a rough time out there, and we won't dive too much into it, but we gotta pull together here, right? We got to meet in the middle. It's getting
the red on Fridays.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's jump into Mike Heath. So, Mike Heath, you're growing up in Florida, right? Hillsborough, Florida, I believe.
Yeah, Tampa, Florida.
Drafted in the second round by the Yankees. Did you expect, as you're going through your high school years and formative years, Mike, that you were a Major League Baseball prospect?
Well, I'm going to have to say kind of yes. What happened when I was about 13 years old, playing in the little leagues and pony leagues around the area, everybody always thought, well, you're a pretty good ball player. But what happened at 13 was we were playing in a pony league kind of tournament and stuff, and this guy walked up to me, and boy, I can't remember his name at this point right now. I thought I'd never forget it. But he was handed me a scout card and called my parents over and all of that. And I think his name was Buck Tanner, I think. Oh, can't remember, but anyhow, handed me a scout card and talked to my parents and said, hey, he's a pretty good little player. We're going to keep our eyes on him. And so I think at that point right there, I think my parents knew that probably had something here in this guy. So at that point, when my dad got the scout card and knew that they were watching me, he said, okay, you're not cutting the grass no more, and you just do light chores around the house.
Well, that worked out good for you.
Yes.
So when you get drafted in the second round by the Yankees in 1973, was that I don't know which team were you a fan of, I should say, when you were growing up? I mean, was it exciting to get drafted by the Yankees at that point, or were you looking elsewhere?
Well, when I was in high school, there were so many scouts and head scouts come to watch you play. And, you always see them at the games behind the fence and everything. And the Yankees was one of the last of the scouts and teams that really made contact with us. And so it was a little bit of a surprise. But all the years as a kid playing, in the neighborhood and everything like that, how could you not want to get drafted by the New York Yankees? Yeah. And so that's basically how it went. And back then they had Manuel Cioni and myself. Manuel Cioni was the number 1 draft pick by Philadelphia, and myself with the Yankees number 2. They had us down at the TV station looking at the ticker tape that came across the wire, and they were filming us and taking pictures of us back then. So there was no big hoopla, so to say, in the draft selection back in the day.
Well, Florida had to be almost like Yankees South at that point anyway, I would think. But
well, the Tampa Bay area was more Cincinnati Reds. My dad used to take – my dad used to take me to the Tampa Tarpon games back in the day, and just looking at the guys going like, man, I want to be there one day.
Were you a Reds fan growing up then?
Yeah, we Pete Rose, I love watching him. He was my favorite baseball player. And outside of that, when I was a younger kid, I always played in the neighborhood and batting and stuff like that. I was always Harman Killebrew. I loved Harman Killebrew, maybe because of his name, but he was a great player.
Oh, it is a great baseball name, and he was a great player. He's very, it's funny today as just to stay on that topic for a second. I'm not sure why, but Harman Killebrew is one of the great names in baseball that people have kind of forgotten about, right? Great player. When he retired, he was probably, I don't know, 3rd or 4th on the home run list, the all-time home run list.
Yeah, like I said, being a childhood idol of Harman Killebrew, I finally got to meet him when he was one of our coaches with the Oakland A's. And I went up to him. I'm like, I used to play you as a kid. When I was a kid, I used to be Harman Killebrew all the time. And he started laughing. What a gentle and kind person he was.
Yeah, he always seemed that way too. My guy was, and with you going to the Yankees, you'll probably get my guy was Bobby Ray Mercer was my guy. Loved Bobby. And I'll tell you what, like I judge people. It's funny. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but how I judge people I don't know and have never met is whether I'd like to sit and have a beer with them. And I can see myself sitting, having a beer with Bobby Mercer and just shooting the bull, So did you meet Bobby when you were in the Yankee organization or not?
Very little time. Hello. And, I was pretty much a shy kid, when I was in the minor leagues and stuff like that. But I was an aggressive kid, but meeting players like Bobby and Thurman and Mickey Mantle and all that, it was always being a little shy and standoffish. I think it's more of the respect factor towards those guys.
Yeah, I can imagine getting to spring training with all those legends coming in every year had to be a bit intimidating for a young guy, for sure.
Absolutely.
You may not be able to see this on your and it's hard for me to blow the picture up, but there's a picture of a young Mike Heath here in his full Yankee regalia taking batting practice. You remember that guy?
Yeah, boy, what a terrible, ugly stance that was. It morphed into something better, but no wonder I only hit 250. There's some little stories. Can I tell
I
you a
hate to
little
throw
story?
that at you like that.
No, that's all good. Yeah, that's an ugly stance.
So let's talk about So you get drafted by the Yankees, and you start to move through their minor league organization, and actually, and we'll talk a little bit as much as you want about that experience. But you end up playing not far from where I am. I'm in East Greenbush, New York, near Albany. You played at Syracuse, not too far. No, wait a minute, maybe you didn't.
No, I played in Oneonta.
Yeah, Oneonta, right. So they didn't have the AAA team in Syracuse yet at that point, right? Or you did? You skipped AAA, actually, didn't you?
They were in Columbus, I think, at that time.
Yeah. But you didn't play in AAA, did you?
Not with the Yankees, no.
Yeah.
Actually, I missed AAA. They sent me to basically West Haven, Connecticut, and that's whenever I was converted into a catcher, basically.
You actually played with some pretty good players through your minor league career before you came up with the Yankees. I made note of a couple. Lamar Hoyt comes to mind. The Yankees ended up trading him away. Actually, a lot of guys you probably came up with, the Yankees traded away because they did a lot of that back in the 70s and 80s, obviously. Who are some of the guys? Willie Upshaw's another guy, the guy that comes to mind. Who are some of the guys that stand out to you as guys that would have been really good Yankees but kind of got moved on for whatever reason?
Well, Jerry Narron hits my mind on that aspect. He was our AAA catcher, and I was a AA catcher in '78. And Jerry was a hell of a player. Buck Showalter was in our organization also. I think he was with me in '78. I'm not sure, in West Haven, or '77. I don't know. And then we had the number 1 draft pick in '78 with us, Dennis Sherrill. He was the number 1 draft pick the next year after me, and he was a pretty good player. He came up and spent some time in the big leagues with the Yankees.
How about, did you play with? I'm thinking of a couple guys. I went to when I was in high school. I went to baseball camp out in Lemoyne 2 years in a row. And the Yankees would always send a couple guys from the Syracuse team over for a day. Brian Doyle and Ron Diorio were 2 guys that I met. Do you remember those 2 names at all?
Yes, and I'll get to Brian Doyle, but another guy, Doug Melvin. He pitched
another major league manager. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not manager, but he became a GM.
I thought he managed for a bit. Bob Melvin, I'm thinking of probably. Yeah.
Yeah, getting to Brian Doyle, I mean, Bucky Dent was our MVP in '78. Yeah. But if you want to look at all the pressure that was on a kid, or more than any other player during that '78 World Series year, or the World Series, was Brian Doyle. Brian Doyle had to fill in for Willie Randolph, and I think Brian Doyle hit like 420 or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, but he filled some pretty big shoes during the World Series because of Willie Randolph being hurt.
Yeah. We hit like 420 or something. Yep. Him and Bucky both had great World Series with the bat.
Yes, they did.
To really help the Yankees. Mike, what was it like? I mean, you get called up that year for the first time, right? 1978. Back up the great Thurman Munson, obviously, and we'll talk about him in a second. But just that season, to have to cut your teeth in the major leagues in 1978 World Series champion Yankees, with a lot of turmoil going on that entire summer, at least from the outside. What did it feel like from the inside for a young kid to be living that life?
Well, how it came about was we had a game in West Haven, Connecticut that evening, and we finished our game, and it was Rick Stenholm, Dennis Sherrill, couple other guys, and myself. We all went to the ground round to have dinner after the game, and we're watching the Yankees game, and Thurman had got hurt. I think Fran Healy got hurt in the game, and Cliff Johnson was catching. What a great guy Cliff was. Cliff treated me like great all the time. And so Rick Stenholm goes, "Heath, they're going to call you up." I'm like, no. They're going to call Narron up because Jerry's in AAA and he's waiting to come up. So I get home at about 1:00 in the morning. My phone rings, and it was Bob Zai with the West Haven Yankees general manager. And he says, "Hey, pack your bags. You're going up." And I told Bob, I said, "Look, I want to stay right here. I know they're bringing Nairn up. I want to stay here. I don't want to travel halfway across the country and go to AAA to take his spot." He says, "No, man, they're calling you up to the big leagues. You're going to New York tomorrow." So that was quite interesting night that we had at that point. But getting to this situation with the Yankees, those guys were unbelievable. I mean, just sitting and listening to them and watching them in the clubhouse and all that. Yeah, you had little arguments like everywhere else, but when the bell rang and you crossed between those white lines, those guys had one thing on their mind, was to win.
Yeah.
And, you can have all the clubhouse turmoil you want, but when they crossed that white line, they went out there and played to win the game. And that's what made those guys so unique.
Do you remember the date you came up or the roughly month?
A lot of people do, but I don't.
Because I'm wondering, because obviously the Yankees were 14 and a half games behind in July, I want to say. So it was one of the great comebacks of all time. The newspaper strike in New York probably helped the fact that they were able to come back, I think. But
I think so. But we had a meeting in there in the clubhouse, and Thurman and all the guys, and they threw it all out on the table, and about what can we do to turn this around. And if I'm not mistaken, Lou Piniella comes up. They asked Lou, says, "You have something to say?" He says, This is the best team money can buy. If we're having a meeting about how to win, we must be really screwed up."
Yeah, good point.
So everybody, they hashed it out, man, and I'm going to put we went for it, okay. And these guys really showed you how to win, is what they did as a young player for myself. Yeah.
And what was it like? We got a question here. I'll bring up what it was like to play under Billy Martin, but you played under two very different managers in 1978, and Billy Martin, and all the Yankee fans know what happened with Billy that year, and bringing in Bob Lemon, who was probably the polar opposite of, in a lot of ways, of Billy. What was it like playing for Billy, and I guess the difference with Bob?
Well, I remember when I first went in there, I always tell this little story, and I'm walking in Yankee Stadium and all that, and then the clubhouse opens, and boom, you're in the Yankee clubhouse, and you're just like, well, Pete Sheehy comes walking up to me and says, "Hey, Mike," he says, "nice to have you here." And he introduced himself as club manager, and he said, "Your locker's right there." And you turn around and look, and your name's on a New York Yankee locker. It's like, oh my God, this is awesome. So I'm sitting down, and I hear all this noise, like loud voices and all that. And what I remember is, we don't need no rookie catcher. We need pitching on this team. We need this and that, blah, 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 blah. So then the press come walking out of this room, and they ask me a couple questions. I don't remember. I said, "I'm just happy to be here," like every rookie says.
Right.
And a few minutes later, Billy Martin comes walking out, which I love this guy. He comes walking out, and he says, "Hey, Heath, nice to see you. We need catching here. I'm glad you're here." Really? But, it was Billy Martin. I love the guy. In fact, I'd run through a wall for the man. He's my type of manager.
Yeah.
You know where you stand with him, at least I did. And when he came over to Oakland with us in '81, he really fired up that ball club. And then Bob Lemon, I really never understood who Bob Lemon was. And then you look up the stats and everything. But yeah, Bob was just calm, quiet, and let the guys go do their thing, where Billy had his hands more into everything and running the ball club. That's how I saw it. But, some of the guys, I guess, wanted a little more calmer effect around the clubhouse.
Yeah, I was going to go there. I mean, and maybe you don't have a good feel for this, but, I mean, obviously it seemed that calming effect, and somebody just letting the players go out and play had a huge effect on them coming back. Would the Yankees have come back, and if Billy had stayed at the helm, you think, for the entire year, or was it just not going to work if Billy stuck around that year?
I feel that they would have. Maybe some of the veteran Yankees know better than I do.
Yeah.
But, sometimes I feel you don't need a manager to play the game sometimes. Once he writes out the lineup, you go out there and do your job. If it's when you don't do your job is when he needs to step in. And I felt Billy was that way with us in Oakland.
Great point. And yeah, your career did intersect with Billy there a couple of times, which we'll get to in a second. Before I leave the Yankees, or before you leave the Yankees, I guess, talk to me about Thurman. I mean, obviously one of the most beloved Yankees of all time. What was your relationship in that short time that you spent with Thurman, and what effect did he have on your career?
There were there were two guys that helped me. Well, more than that, but coaching staff wise, that constantly talked to me. Well, one wasn't a coach. Elston Howard, he used to sit on the bench when I sat on the bench, and he would talk to me about catching and this, that, and the other. Boy, I tell you what, he really was in my ear, telling me, look at this, watch this, and helping me and giving me advice. Thurman, on the other hand, would always, talk to me about how to block the plate, and here's how you got to do it. You'll find your own way, but here's how I do it. And, blah, blah, blah. He was always lending out his voice to me as far as giving me some advice on things, what I should do during the course of the game. And just watching Thurman play with aches and pains, stitches in his hand when during the World Series that I think a lot of people didn't know about.
Yeah.
Just what a gamer that guy really is.
Did the way he carried himself and approached the game really have an effect on you and how you approached the game throughout your career after that? You feel?
I think it reinsured me that I was on the right path of how I approached the game by watching a superstar the way he went at about his business. And I think it just reinsured my mentality that, hey, yeah, okay, you're right on with what you're thinking about how to approach the game.
Yeah. You mentioned we before, and you certainly get to say we. You were part of a World Series championship. It doesn't matter whether you had 600 at bats or I'm trying to think 66 or whatever you might have had. You contributed to that team in whatever way you contributed. And you got to play in the World Series, right?
Yeah, I got to catch one inning, and hey, that's one inning more than a lot of people have in this world, and a lot of ex-baseball players. But yeah, I got to catch one inning, and it was so thrilling. I mean, my first year in the big leagues, and you walk into this, and then you're in the World Series, and my God, I mean, how much more could a rookie ask for?
Did you give any thought that would be your last time in a World Series?
No, I actually didn't. For some reason, I thought, man, we're we can get there again somewhere down the line, and I had been fortunate because we're 78 with the Yankees, 81 with the the Oakland A's who went to the playoffs, 87 with the Tigers, and 91 with the Braves. So I was pretty fortunate to get in the postseason a couple times with several different teams.
Yeah, I kind of wish, and I do remember you from that team. 1978 is my favorite year as a Yankee fan, to be honest with you. And I do remember you from that team very well. And I was a little shocked. I was shocked at the trade to begin with, that offseason, where they sent Sparky Lyle, yourself, Dave Racich. I know there was a couple other names from the Yankees.
Larry McCall.
Texas. Yeah, Larry McCall, yep. And Ramos comes to mind. I can't remember his first name, but it was a huge trade, obviously. And the main guy coming back, I think, for the Yankees was Dave Righetti.
Domingo Ramos.
Domingo Ramos, yes, thank you. Big trade, though. I mean, you don't see trades like that today. I mean, Righetti comes back. Juan Benitez comes back. He played well for the Yankees. What was it? How did you feel? Did you think your career was going to be as a Yankee? And was it? I'm sure it wasn't fun to get traded away at that point in time.
Well, my mentality was, you're ready for the next season after the season's over. And I didn't know where I was going to go because before I was traded, because, Thurman is the catcher with the Yankees, and I got a taste of the big leagues, and I was just wondering what next year comes about. My deal of it is how I was, is that, my mentality, as long as somebody wants me in the big leagues, that's where I want to go. And I really didn't think about it. But a little thing towards that trade was, I was home during the winter of '78, and I get a phone call, and I go, "Hello." He goes, "Hey, Rook, Thurman here." I'm like, "Hey, man." He goes, "I heard you just got traded." And I'm like, "I know nothing about it." He says, "Yeah, man." He says, "You got traded to Texas, and this is what happened, that what happened." He goes, "Man," he says, "I was getting ready to give you my job. Now I got to work another 5 years."
Well, it's funny because Thurman was talking about not playing. They were starting to move him away from catcher a little bit in '79 before, obviously his tragic passing. They started playing him other places, trying to save his body a little bit. I mean, you might have had a chance to move forward there. Did you look back at it that way, Mike, or that's just not something that was in your mindset at that point, or any point in time?
Yeah, good question. I don't think I looked back at it a little bit. I just, once I got traded, you got to move forward and, move forward and trying to gain it or win a job somewhere else, and, I sometimes I feel that if the Yankees really felt that I could become their next catcher, they probably would have came after me and got me, I guess,
Yeah.
So, but that in the works, it didn't happen. But, my mentality was, okay, you broke in. Now you got to stay here. The old saying is, it's easy to get there. It's harder to stay there. That's what we used to say. So my focus was on trying to get with another ball club and just stay focused on winning a job.
That makes sense. Well, after the trade to Texas, and Texas had a pretty good catcher of their own in Jim Sundberg at the time, but you had to be like, Jesus, can I catch a break here? Right? And you don't get to play with Texas. You never actually suited up. I don't think you suited up for the big league team, right?
Well, I go there in spring training, and I caught every inning in spring training, just about. I mean, I caught a lot. Sonny didn't start catching a little bit. So I caught quite a bit in the early part of the spring training. With about 2 weeks to go, Sonny comes up to me. He says, "Kid, you did a great job. It's time for me to take over now." I'm like, "Hey, whatever. That's all good." So what happened after that, the GM, Eddie Robinson, calls me to his office, and he goes, "Hey," he said, "congratulations, you made the big league team." I'm like, "Eddie," I said, "that's great, but look at Sonny, man. He catches 158 games out of 162. Yeah. I just started catching. I need to go down to the minor leagues and improve my skills a little bit." And he said, "Well, you want to go to AAA?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, because I need the catch." And so he said, okay. So he signed me down to AAA, and little did he know at the time, he used my last option. So what happened was, when I signed the paper, I was frozen down in AAA. So I had to clear waivers to come back up.
Okay.
And that wasn't going to happen because there were several teams after me. So that's how I went to Tucson, Arizona. We had a hell of a AAA team there. And then I got traded a couple months into the season to Oakland.
And a big difference there, obviously, because you get traded from, well, now you've gone from the Yankees to Texas to Oakland. And in '79, Oakland wasn't very good yet. Your first time you're getting a chance to play more regularly, obviously, which is good for you personally, I suppose. But it had to be an adjustment to, be losing. I don't even know the team's record that year, but I know it was well under 500. So.
Well, I'll never forget the first time I stepped in the big league dugout in Oakland. Miguel Delaney was chasing Jim Marshall around the dugout with a bat. I'm like, whoa, wait, what?
And you thought it was crazy with the Yankees, right?
Yeah, man, that was some kind of fun. And that's the next day, Jim Marshall comes to me and says, "Hey, you play the outfield?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I played it quite a bit in the minor leagues." I didn't. So I played quite a bit. And Dwayne Murphy, he said, "Well, then you're the starting left fielder tomorrow." I guess Ricky, whatever, was hurt, whatever. And Murph, my buddy, was standing right there, which was our center fielder. And Marshall walks away. And Murph, in his cool attitude, the way he is, he looked at me and said, "You ain't played no outfield." I'm going like, "Yeah, but I played the Pony League." So he started laughing at me. He said, "Hey, bro, just follow me. I'll tell you how to play, and I'll move you around the field." And that's where he and I bonded, and he and I have been great friends ever since.
Fake it till you make it, right? I mean, that's you live the epitome of that. So, but now then that was a bad team. I was just looking quickly. I mean, they won 54 games. It doesn't get a whole lot worse than that, right? But yeah. Billy Martin comes back into your sphere of influence and turns that team around very quickly the next year. They win 83 games, and Mike Heath is becoming a big part of that team.
The funny thing about it is that after the one day we were at the Oakland Hyatt having something to eat and having something to drink, and I look and there's Billy Martin sitting at the bar. So I go walking up to him.
That's a shock in itself, by the way, but that's another story.
Hey, love the man. So I go up to him, "Hey, Billy, Mike Heath." I was shaking hands and said, "I just want to tell you that I love playing for you, man, and thank you for everything." He said, "Yeah, Heath," he says, looked at me and he says that you're going to be playing for me sooner than what you think again. I'm like, okay. And next year he was our manager.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we'll continue in a second. I just want to mention everybody who's joined us since we started. My guest today is Mike Heath, former member of the 1978 World Series Yankees. Really good player with the A's and the Tigers, and moved on to St. Louis and the Braves. I want to welcome everybody who's in the room. I know there's some questions. Kevin, Kevin, I don't want to butcher your last name, so I'm not going to say it right now. We'll get to your question a little bit later because it'll kind of wrap up things as we have the interview with Kevin or with Mike. So continuing on, as the A's, as Billy Martin comes in, as I said, turns the team around, and obviously it helps to have a Ricky Henderson and a Dwayne Murphy coming up out of the minor leagues to hasten that improvement. But Billy's influence has been turning teams around very quickly when he gets there. So you can't really mitigate his influence on the team. And
Tony Armas also, he was one of the top outfielders in the game.
And a plethora of great arms, right? Steve McCaddy and Mike Norris and Langford, and gosh, the list goes on. They just had arms up coming out of every place. How did it? I mean, did it to be able to come to building something? When you came to the Yankees, you became part of something that was already at the top, right? Now you're at something that's building back up. The A's had a dynasty earlier in the decade. Well, in the 70s, you're in the 80s now. What was the difference in being part of a team that was on its way up rather than already at the top?
You had a lot of young guys that were hungry. You had I think Billy saw there was a lot of young guys on that team that had talent. And when you kind of come up together of course, I didn't come up with these guys through the minor leagues, but I got there, we were 23 years old together, We come up together and we learn how to play. So Billy took that talent and taught that talent how to play. We kind of, and we respected him. I know still today, Murph loves Billy too, and there's a lot of us that do on that team. And he gained our, we're going to put that he gained our respect. You hear players, we got, you got to respect me. Now, we respected Billy, and then we gained his respect, man, because of how we went about our business. So we got Billy's respect also. And we just grew together as a team. And Billy put a good, fine coaching staff: Clete Boyer, Lee Walls, George Minnerwall, Art Fowler.
Art had to be there.
and put these guys together to instruct us and help us. And they really brought out the talent, and he saw how hungry we were as a bunch of young guys to prove ourselves, and it just all clicked for us.
Well, in 1981, it certainly did click. I mean, it was a strange year, obviously, with the strike. And before I go on to the baseball part of 1981, but let's touch on the strike itself. How did that affect a young player like Mike Heath? I mean, some of these veterans who go out on strike, I mean, they've been making some decent money, not the money they make today, obviously, but they made decent money for the times. So it had to be much harder on a guy like yourself and some of the other young guys to miss 2 months of the season and no pay. What was that like?
Yeah, actually, when the strike happened, but right at the end when it was getting ready, I only had like $1,500 in my account. And what it was is that you had veterans on the team that would loan you money to help you get through. And so our Players Association vowed that this will never happen to the players again. So we used to get a licensing money, and I think they still do today. I don't know how it works today. But what would happen is that if you had a full year in the big leagues, you got a full licensing check. Have a half year, you get a half check. So those checks after the strike, let's say, at one time the licensing money was like $500, and then at one time before I left it was over $100,000. Wow. So they would take that half of that money or 3/4 of that money and put it into a strike fund. So if the strike ever happened again, they could filter our own money back to us to pay the bills. And I hope I made sense on that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So they took the licensing money and put it in this big fund. So, yeah, it was a little tight, but there were players on the team that had been in the big leagues for a while making pretty good money. Hey, $100,000 or $200,000 back then was great, right?
Yeah.
So they would loan us money, and then when we got caught up, we would return the money back to the players that helped us.
Were you guys unified pretty much as a team in going out on strike?
More than what they are today is what I feel.
Yeah. It's funny. I was reading a book recently on the Dodgers, and it covers that 81 season. And it's funny. Some of the veterans on that team were very outspoken and on opposite sides of the issue. I read about Davey Lopes, who I think you played with Oakland for a short time. He was very outspoken about the players not being on strike in 81, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think pretty much most it was all about a drug issue, and they wanted us to take drug tests, and the deal of it is that our union said no, there's no reason for a drug test. And why people today are thinking drug test, okay, steroids. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about steroids, it was about illegal drugs, the other cocaine and pot and all that kind of stuff. Steroids didn't come in until the 90s, but there was some in the 80s, but that wasn't the big issue. It was about, the cocaine and all that. Yeah. So what we did is instead of having 2 years of arbitration, we gave the owners 3 years of arbitration. So 3 years equals 4. So it's a long story. So we gave in on that issue. We didn't give in on the issue, but we gave them a year of arbitration that we had to have 3 years in the big leagues to go. So it was more about the illegal drug issue as far as, what we think illegal drugs are.
Yeah. Well, back to the baseball part of it, because that's the fun part. Obviously, that team really came together and won the AL West, or at least the one of the half seasons, I guess. And we had an extra round of playoffs for the first time. But you end up getting to the AL Championship Series against your former team. How did it feel playing against the Yankees in that ALCS?
My volume went down a little bit. I'm having a hard time, but I heard you. It was awesome because we were the Oakland A's, and we are a team on becoming hopefully one of the dynasties, And we wanted to beat the Yankees in the worst way. But people got to remember a little bit that Dwayne Murphy went down with a pulled rib cage.
Yeah.
Ricky went down with a pulled rib cage, and a couple other guys that got hurt. So that really hurt our chances as far as beating the Yankees. But when the Yankees get into a playoff situation back in the day, they don't lose.
Yeah. Yeah. It had to be an interesting time and fun for you in a way, I would think, to play against the Yankees in that series. So
yes, it was
a great season. Again, Billy doing a great turnaround, but again, as kind of was the trend with Billy too. Now, 1982, things don't go so well, and the team, and I'm sure there was injuries. I know the pitchers were all hurt in 1982, and the team goes only 68-94. Billy loses his job. What happened in 82? It looked like that team was really going to be around for a while. Was it just the injuries to the pitchers and such?
Some people can throw that out there about that. It probably had some effect on it, but here is what I feel the effect was.
Yep.
That spring training, we're in Phoenix, Arizona, at a new complex. It wasn't new; it was an old complex. I think the Giants were there. We went in there, and there were back in the day, we had no indoor facilities. And what I mean by that is you didn't have a place to take BP if it was raining. You didn't have just very limited undercover area for guys to pitch. There were no indoor facilities. So coming out of that, it rained constantly that spring training in 82. I think Mike Norris came out of spring training with 12 innings, if that, underneath his belt, and then the season started.
Yeah.
But we had no indoor facilities like they have today. These guys, you could get a monsoon or whatever, and they're still training inside. We didn't have none of that. So, excuse me. So when the season started, I feel that these guys tried to pitch themselves in shape instead of being in shape for the season. I think that was a big factor for why these guys got hurt. Some guys might disagree, but I think that was one of the big factors, that our pitchers were not in shape coming into the season. Not because they couldn't be, it's because we didn't have the facilities to do this.
Yeah. Well, Billy goes, but Mike Heath continues with Oakland. Before you leave the team, you really established yourself as a pretty good Major League Baseball player in 80, 84 and 85. You had really good years. While the team may not have, but you catch the eye of first you go to St. Louis for a short stint. I think you played for Whitey. Did you play for Whitey there?
Yes.
Yeah. And since we've talked about managers, what was your relationship like with Whitey in that short time you were there? Oh, that might say it all right there, Mike.
Yeah, I got to be very careful with my words about that 86 Cardinals team. It was not a cohesive bunch of guys like I felt the Yankees were, like I felt Oakland was. We were tight. I mean, we were a bunch of great guys that loved each other. I didn't feel that at all in St. Louis.
Interesting, because that team went on to be pretty good after 1986. First, so did the team you went to, but obviously, but
St. Louis was good in 85 and
well, that's true. Yeah, 85 they were good too. Yeah, I forgot about 85. Maybe they had the hangover from the bad call in 85 in the World Series.
Oh, that was brutal,
right? That's one of the worst calls ever. Well, anyway, Whitey was one of the better managers in baseball history as well. But because you played for some great ones. We talked about Billy Martin already, Whitey Herzog for that short time. But you go to Detroit and you play for another iconic manager in Sparky Anderson, and on a really good ball club there. And talk about that a little bit, Mike.
I tell you, Sparky was awesome. I'm sorry the camera's moving around a little bit.
That's okay. You're fine.
I got a little hearing. He was awesome. He knew how to talk to you. He was pleasant. He would get fired up when he needed to, but he was always there to lend an ear to you. And I love playing for that guy. Sparky was just a great manager and a great human being. But also the team leaving a situation in '86 with the Cardinals and coming to the '86 Tigers, and then you get that cohesiveness with the players again.
Yeah.
That's worth its weight in gold right there. And Sparky, you can't say enough about Sparky. He was an awesome manager.
And Sparky moved you around a lot. I mean, I know you moved around a lot with a bit anyway with Oakland, but Sparky really used you around the field a lot. I know I think you primarily still played catcher. In fact, one league, I think you led the league in putouts by catchers, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah, it was assist, and I figured out how to do that after Lance Parrish told me how to do it.
Well, what'd you do?
Once you block a ball and strike three, instead of tagging the guy, you take the ball and throw it to first, and you get an assist.
Well, whatever works. It looks good, I suppose, when you have to negotiate your contract the next year, right?
Yeah. I'm like, man, I just think about getting the out. I'd block the ball and tag the guy. No, throw. I said, throw it to first base. You get an assist. I'm like, oh, okay.
But if I'm not mistaken, through your career, you played every position except pitcher. Am I wrong?
That's correct. I started every position also. And that's where I wish that Sparky would have given me the opportunity, because I think there's only like 5-6 guys that ever played one position every inning, a 9-inning game.
I don't even know.
And I wish he would have gave me the opportunity to do that.
I can only think of 2 guys that did that, actually. Burt Campaneris and Cesar Tovar are the only guys I can think of.
Yeah. You probably know more than I do, but I thought the number was 5. I'm not quite sure.
It could be. It could have gone up since then, but that would have been fun, right?
Oh, been awesome. But yeah, playing every position, and starting there because, coach gets confidence in you. I felt that I was probably my second best position would have been the outfield. I love playing the outfield. First best is catching, and then I felt third base was a good place for me also. But the outfield, I love playing the outfield.
Well, that was your first, lie in Major League Baseball that you were an outfielder, right? So, so again, really good Tiger teams. And I got to move forward a little bit just so we don't run out of time for everything. And I know there was a couple questions I wanted to get to that kind of tie into the end. You play, and again, you're a really good Major League Baseball player and a very contributing member to that Tiger team who goes to the playoffs at least once in that time, right? 80.
Yes.
87? Yeah, 87. And again, a lot of good talent on that team. Were you surprised that team didn't go further in the playoffs or win a World Series during that time?
Well, I tell you what, 87. Pardon me?
Some great players you played with there.
Oh, yeah. You look, you can go on down the list. Lou Whitaker, Chet Lemon, Kirk Gibson, Darrell Evans, Alan Trammell. You can go on down the list with those guys, Jack Morris. But unfortunately, we hit the Minnesota Twins in the 87 playoffs. When the Minnesota Twins get hot, nobody can beat them.
Yeah.
Those guys were awesome. They if a mistake made a pitcher on our side, they hit it hard somewhere. They made you pay for it. But Minnesota was always known for a team that once they're hot, forget about it. You can't beat them.
Yeah.
We just ran into a team that was just smoking hot.
Well, the Braves found out about that as well. Right. So
yeah, I was there in '91. Of course, I had elbow surgery with the Braves, and
yeah, I was going to bring that up. So you finish up your career in Atlanta, and did you know you were done? It's one of the questions that actually one of our viewers was bringing up. That once you got there, did you know you were done? Did you feel like you could come back, or it was just you knew your time was up?
I was 37, 38. I feel like I could have played the 40, but before my elbow, I I had a bad, I threw early in spring training in 91, went home, woke up the next morning, I couldn't bend my arm. But my depth perception in my eyes started going just a little bit, but I was still in great shape. But when my elbow went and I had the surgery, I knew I was done. I couldn't throw the ball anymore like I used to, and my elbow constantly hurt me. So yes, I knew I was done after my elbow surgery and trying to come back from it.
Yeah. Well, it was a really good career. And when your career ended, I mean, you did manage a little bit in the minor leagues. Did you have aspirations to do that? And what if so, what's really soured you on that aspect of the game?
Managing part?
Yeah.
Well, probably I wasn't that good at it. I'm more of an instructor.
Yeah.
But I think the attitude of the players with their agents got so that if you said no, they would call their agent on to the organization, then the organization come down on you. Yeah. Kenny Williams, which was the GM for the White Sox, did a great job trying to monitor a lot of that. I love Kenny Williams. He's a great guy. But the players, once they had the agents, they would complain on every little thing that went on. So yeah. I'm like, man, I don't have time for this. Now, being a coach and helping catchers, work and learn how to do their footwork and stuff like that, I would have loved that more than probably managing.
And so after the managing gigs, though, you didn't really stay in baseball doing that type of instructing, right?
No, I did not. I came home and started riding motorcycles everywhere. And
does that pay good?
What I do now is Jim Osting, which is a left-handed pitcher. He was with the Braves and Milwaukee. He has a baseball academy down here. And we have one of the best travel ball teams in the country, Ostinger's baseball.
Yeah.
And I help train some of the kids that come through the academy and stuff like that, and get to see these young little guys with those little stars in their eyes, because they want to be out there and want to be a good catcher or outfielder and make their dreams come true. I feel like that sometimes I can help them reach that goal a little bit when they're young.
What's the age group of that team?
I've had a kid. The youngest I've had has been 7 years old, and he was a little stud behind the plate.
A young Mike Heath.
I think he was better than Mike Heath, to be honest with you.
So let me back up for a second. So just to kind of look at your career in totality, we talked about the fact you played for some of the best managers of that era, if not of all time, in Sparky Anderson, Billy Martin. And maybe it's not a fair question, but who was your, maybe I know the answer too, I don't know. Who was your favorite?
Well, I give Sparky Anderson a lot of credit. I love the guy, but Billy Martin has got to be my favorite. I love his attitude. I love his fieriness. And I just know what his mentality was, as far as he was always 4 or 5 moves ahead of every manager. He was just I just love his attitude.
Awesome. I figured that was where you were going to go. And I love Billy. Billy is one of the most polarizing figures probably of that era, right? You loved Billy or you hated him. I don't think there was any in between there. And as a Yankee fan, I just loved that. The same things you talked about Billy. Yes. And the way he was so far ahead of people in the games.
Yes. Can I give one story about him?
Absolutely.
I was with Oakland, and we come into Yankee Stadium to play the Yankees. So a little history about that. Billy was the type of manager that you got bases loaded, and a guy hits like a triple or base clearing, and the fans are going wild, right?
Yeah.
Billy always, if he had a guy that could bunt, he would always squeeze on the very next pitch to keep the crowd up going.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he did that several times with us in Oakland. So I'm catching, and sure enough, this is what happens. Bases are loaded, guy hits a triple, And the guy coming up, I can't remember who it was, but I know he could bunt, and there was less than 2 outs. And I'm like, I know Billy's bunting here, squeezing this run home to keep the crowd, energized. So get out there. I call a pitch out, and I pitch out, right? No squeeze. And I throw it back to the pitcher, and I look over at Billy, and Billy's sitting there like this going. And then he squeezed on the next pitch.
He knew you knew.
He knew what I was thinking, I think, at that point, because I played with him for so long there. I think he knew that I knew that, he was just great.
He was a character, man. What was your favorite? What was your favorite stadium? There's a question here about whether you liked hitting at Tiger Stadium or Yankee Stadium. So I'll ask you, I guess, before we wrap it up, what was your favorite stadium to hit and play in?
I tell you,
because it may not be either
the Bay Area, Oakland, but my favorite ballpark had to be Anaheim, the Angels back in the day.
Yeah,
I don't know, the setting was right, the field was beautiful. I just really loved Anaheim for myself.
Interesting. Well, Mike, we're about out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I had a great time. I know, and I'm sure you probably got to get on that Harley and ride somewhere today from what I've been reading and hearing from you. So,
yeah, I just got back from the mountains. We went up there for a week and rode, but I got to go to the gym after we're finished. I hit the gym every day.
Well, I'm not going to be able to make it for the gym. Do a few reps for me, would you? Because I could use it.
Will do.
Listen, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. And I'm going to wrap up the show. But if you do want to chat for a second, you can hang around. If you got to run to the gym, you can get going. But I want to thank you again for coming on. I had a great time with you today.
Keith, thank you very much. You wrap it up, and I'll wait right here for you, and we'll chit-chat a little bit, my friend.
Excellent. Thanks again. So Mike Heath, former Yankee, where I remember him from, kind of wish he'd stuck around. And after, the tragic passing of Thurman Munson, maybe Mike Heath has a longer career as a Yankee, but it doesn't work out that way. And he does have a very productive Major League Baseball career. Listen, guys, I'll be on Sunday with our Stream of Consciousness chat. I'll probably be doing a vlog later. Maybe I better not, because I might be a little angry still at Facebook. But remember, next week, the last 30-game winner in Major League Baseball will be our guest, Denny McLain. Going to be an hour you can't miss. They're all hours you can't miss, whether it's Mike Heath or Denny McLain or Daryl Knowles or Greg Pryor, some of my favorite guys. I love chatting with these guys. I appreciate you guys coming in and supporting them and the show. And don't forget, send Facebook a note. Get TGI Sports Talk page back up so I can get the distribution out there. Thanks, guys. We'll see you Sunday. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk, and Northeast Streaming Sports.